A little girl was subjected to endless chores and psychological manipulation by her stepmother while her millionaire father was away on a long business trip. Desperate and hurt, she could only write secret letters hoping for a miracle. Until an unexpected ally helped get those letters into her father's hands on the very day of his unforeseen return. Using the most ingenious method imaginable. Now get comfortable and relax while you listen to this story. I truly hope it acts as a balm to help you fall asleep tonight. What city are you watching this video from and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. Let's begin. Lucy, wake up, the sun is up. The woman's voice sounded light, like a whisper, but sharp enough to make the little girl jump. The child opened her eyes. A pale light filtered through the old, dusty curtains. Outside, Veronica's heels clicked with a steady rhythm on the hardwood floor, each strike a reminder that morning had arrived. And for Lucy, it was never just an ordinary morning. The 8-year-old girl, with her thin blonde hair, scrambled out of bed. There was no time to brush her hair or tie her sneakers properly because a single minute of delay meant a scolding. Veronica always said, "Punctuality is the foundation of discipline. I'm teaching you to be disciplined." But Lucy knew better. It wasn't a lesson, it was a punishment. She grabbed the broom and started sweeping the hallway from the front door to the kitchen. The sharp smell of floor cleaner irritated her nose. On the wall hung the wedding photos of her father and Veronica. The gazes of the framed couple seemed to follow the little girl's every small movement. Downstairs, Veronica was seated at the dining table with a steaming cup of tea and a magazine open in front of her. Her brown hair was perfectly styled, and her colorful dress made her look like the ideal woman for a charity gala. If anyone walked in at that moment, they would undoubtedly think this was an exemplary, loving family. But it only took Lucy accidentally dropping a spoon for that appearance to shatter instantly. "Can't you be more careful?" Veronica's voice softened, but her eyes were like cold steel. Lucy crouched to pick up the spoon, not daring to speak. "Your father left this house to your mother and me. You have to learn to keep it spotless." "Understood?" The girl nodded. The word father resonated vaguely in her mind. Alexander had been away for almost 8 months, calling only a few times a week. Those brief calls usually happened right at the dining table, with Veronica putting the phone on speaker. "Lucy, my love, are you okay?" he would ask, his warm voice traveling through the line. "Yes, Dad, I'm okay. Are you studying hard?" "Yes, sir. Thank you. You've been such a good girl." "Honey, don't worry." Veronica would interrupt, letting out a light giggle before quickly ending the call with the excuse that she needs to rest. Then she would turn to Lucy. The smile vanishing, replaced by an empty phrase. "You shouldn't complain. Your father works very hard for your future." Lucy believed it for a while. But then she understood that the more she believed it, the lonelier she felt. Lucy's days were always the same, mopping in the morning, washing towels at noon, scrubbing the kitchen in the afternoon. She ate cold leftovers from previous meals, drank plain tap water, and slept in the small room behind the kitchen that had once been the maid's quarters. Veronica constantly repeated, "Big beds are for people who do big jobs," so Lucy never dared to go near the upstairs bedroom where the golden sunset light filtered onto the linen sheets every afternoon. Once, when Veronica left the house, Lucy secretly opened the closet that had belonged to her late mother, where she kept a small box with some keepsakes. But she barely touched an old doll before she heard the front door open. Veronica was there, her eyes as cold as glass. "Lucy, that doesn't belong to you anymore," she said, snatching the doll from her hands. "The past only makes you weak." Lucy didn't cry. She just watched as the object fell into the trash can silently, as if it were inevitable. The next day, Veronica hired a new housekeeper, Mrs. Rose, a woman in her 50s with gray hair and a soft voice. "You will only work on the ground floor," Veronica instructed her. "Don't interfere in the girls' affairs." But Mrs. Rose noticed everything. Every time she saw Lucy struggle with a bucket of water, she discreetly approached to help her hold it. Every night, when Veronica was already asleep, She brought her a piece of cake and a small cup of milk. "Don't let her see you with this," she whispered. "Eat a little so you don't get weak." Lucy would nod, holding the cup with both hands, drinking in small, trembling sips. It was one of the few moments she felt someone truly saw her. But Veronica wasn't naive. One morning, she found a dirty plate hidden in a corner of the kitchen. "When did you eat? Who gave you permission?" Her voice was as sharp as a knife. Lucy remained silent, lowering her head, clutching the hem of her blouse with her fingers. Veronica gave her a light slap, but hard enough to leave a mark. "If you're hungry, remember this. Only those who deserve it eat until they're full." That day, Lucy didn't taste a bite. She polished the floors until night fell, then leaned against the wall, listening to the ticking of the clock. In the darkness, she imagined the dinner her father would be having far away, perhaps in some elegant restaurant in downtown New York. She imagined him asking, "What did you eat today?" And she could lie, saying, "I ate very well." In the neighborhood. The neighbors still saw Veronica smiling every morning as she shopped at the upscale market in the Heights. When someone asked why Lucy looked so thin, Veronica would let out a little laugh. "The doctor said she tends to gain weight easily, so I have her on a strict diet. You know, the daughter of a rich man has to watch her figure." Those words were believed immediately because Veronica had the gift of speaking with charm. No one suspected that behind that closed door, a little girl was learning to survive through silence. Time passed, and the signs of fatigue on Lucy's face became more evident. Still, she kept struggling to finish all her chores just to avoid a scolding. But the more exhausted she was, the more mistakes she made. Veronica began to lose patience, shooting icy glares at her every time she spilled water. One afternoon, the house phone rang. Lucy was washing dishes when she heard her father's voice from the living room. She ran, her heart pounding. "Hi, Dad," she shouted. But before she could get close, Veronica held up a finger, ordering silence. "The girl is taking a shower," she told the phone, her voice sweet as honey. "Yes, my love, don't worry. I'm taking very good care of her." Lucy stood behind the door, her hands still wet, listening to every lie she couldn't refute. That night she lay in her small room, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The clock marked the seconds, but in her head, only one question repeated. If Dad knew, would it be different? Outside, Veronica passed by the door. She stopped for a moment, slightly adjusted the curtain and smiled, watching the golden light filtering through the crack as if admiring her own work. "Get up early tomorrow," she said without looking inside. "You have to sweep the front patio too. Your father is coming to visit soon. Don't let him see you like this." Her footsteps faded away. Lucy sat up, hugging her knees. The news made her feel happy and terrified at the same time. If her father really returned, would he see the truth, or would he only see the image of the exemplary mother everyone believed in? Mornings in that house always began with the same sounds: Veronica's heels hitting the floor, the violent slam of a cabinet, and then the low, sharp reprimands audible enough for Lucy, but not for anyone outside. "You're not done yet? Clean it again. There's still a stain there." Her voice was soft, but every word was an order. Lucy lowered her head slightly, her trembling hands clutching the mop. The floor was so shiny it reflected her pale, lifeless face. Through the window, the sun shone as always, but inside the house, the light seemed trapped behind thick curtains. Since the day Veronica told the school that the girl is sick and needs a long leave, Lucy hadn't gone out a single time. There were no more laughs with friends, no recess, no math homework, no drawings with crayons. Now her world was reduced to rooms to clean, dishes to wash, and the incessant ticking of the clock on the wall. One afternoon, Lucy was mopping the floor when her stomach growled. Breakfast had only been a piece of stale bread that Mrs. Rose had slipped her in secret. Veronica was in the living room talking on the phone with her friends. "She's such a good girl, dear. I'm teaching her independence. Having her do some chores to keep her healthy." She spoke with a light, almost sing-song voice. Letting out little laughs as if she were proud of her parenting. In the kitchen, Lucy sat down, too tired to stand. She took a cup, turned on the tap, and drank several gulps until her throat hurt. The cold water went down, dragging the emptiness of her heart with it. Suddenly, slow footsteps approached from behind. Mrs. Rose appeared holding a tray with a sandwich and a small pitcher of milk. "Did you forget to eat again, child?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. Lucy startled, shaking her head. "I'm not hungry, ma'am." "No, Lucy, I can see it in your little face," replied Mrs. Rose, smiling sadly as she unwrapped the sandwich and placed it in her hand. "Eat or you're going to faint." Lucy took it, biting it into tiny pieces, careful not to drop a single crumb. With every bite, she looked toward the living room door. "Don't be afraid," whispered Mrs. Rose. "I won't let her find out." That night, Veronica returned home. She looked around the kitchen and sensed a faint smell of food in the air. "Did someone eat in here?" she asked with a voice so calm it froze the blood. Lucy remained silent. Mrs. Rose stepped forward and said hurriedly, "I just warmed up some leftovers for myself." Veronica narrowed her eyes. "I don't like anyone sneaking around in this house." That simple sentence made the air dense instantly. The next day she didn't mention anything, but Lucy knew it was only a matter of time. Veronica didn't forget. She just waited for the right moment to act. A week later, Alexander sent a large box of gifts from overseas. Inside was a huge teddy bear, several boxes of candy, and a storybook. When the delivery arrived, Veronica opened the box right in front of Lucy. "Your father's gifts have arrived," she said with indifference. Lucy looked at the teddy bear, and her eyes lit up. But Veronica closed the box immediately, leaving only a small box of candies. "This is enough. I'll save the rest." Lucy tried to speak, but meeting that cold gaze, she swallowed her words. That night, she crept down to the storage room and hugged the old box containing her mother's keepsakes. A photograph, a silk handkerchief, and a silver necklace engraved with the name Lucy. The necklace was the only thing that made her feel loved. The child put it on, squeezed it tight in her hands, and closed her eyes, trying to imagine her mother's scent, her soft voice telling stories before sleep. Upstairs, Veronica's footsteps resonated coming down the stairs. She opened the door, and the blinding light fell upon her. "Hello? What are you doing here?" I was just looking at my mom's photo." "A photo?" Veronica took a step closer and ripped the silver necklace from Lucy's hands. "This is no longer appropriate for you, Lucy. You are Alexander's daughter, not the daughter of the past. Give it back." "It was my mom's." Lucy's voice trembled. Veronica smiled with disdain, said nothing, and turned around, leaving the room and leaving the door open. Lucy couldn't sleep all night. She sat in silence next to the wooden closet, staring at the empty place where the necklace used to be. Outside, the wind passed through the trees, carrying a faint whistle like her mother's whisper. One afternoon, when Veronica went out to a party in the upscale district, Lucy continued mopping the floor as usual. Sweat ran down her forehead, and her hand slipped on the mop handle, causing her to fall onto the stone floor. Everything went black. When she opened her eyes, she found herself lying in the small bed with a damp cloth on her forehead. Beside her was Mrs. Rose, her face full of worry. "You were unconscious for almost an hour," she whispered. "I was so scared. I should call a doctor." Lucy sat up abruptly and grabbed her hand. "No. If Mom finds out, she'll fire you." "But you're so weak, you can't." "I'll be fine. Promise me you won't tell anyone." Lucy's look was pleading, holding back tears. Finally, Mrs. Rose nodded. The two remained in silence for a long while. The clock on the wall marked time with a heavy tick-tock. "Your mother was so good," whispered Mrs. Rose. "If she were alive, she would never forgive them treating you like this." Lucy squeezed her hand, responding in a low voice. "I don't want anyone else to suffer because of me." Suddenly, the door flew open. Veronica stood in the threshold, eyes narrowed. "What is going on here?" "The girl was a little tired. I let her rest. Mrs. Rose replied, trying to stay calm. It's not necessary. Veronica's voice was icy. If she has so much free time, she can clean the living room again. As for the girl, she is to get up even earlier tomorrow. Mrs. Rose turned. But before leaving, Veronica added with a sharp voice, and I don't want to see you interfering in this family's affairs again. When Veronica's footsteps faded down the hallway, Mrs. Rose looked at Lucy, her eyes full of unease. I'll look for another way, she whispered. I can't stay doing nothing. Lucy shook her head, her voice barely a breath. You don't have to. I'm already used to it. Night fell. The house was plunged into a thick silence. Lucy sat by the window looking at the dark garden. She thought of school, of her friends doing homework or listening to their mothers tell them stories. Instead, for her, only the cold walls and the wind whistling outside existed. Mrs. Rose knocked on the door softly and handed her a small piece of cake. Eat, child, even if it's just a little. Ma'am, whispered Lucy, why doesn't Mom want me to go out? Because she's afraid. Afraid that people will know the truth. But what truth? Mrs. Rose was silent. After a moment, she responded. The truth is that this child is growing up in a house without love. The words seemed etched in the air. Lucy lowered her head, holding the piece of cake in her hands while tears fell in silence. Downstairs, the phone rang. Alexander? Veronica was speaking with him. Yes, my love, she's fine. Don't worry. Just a little tired from studying so much. Her voice was as sweet as honey, without a single crack where the truth could escape. When she hung up, she looked up toward the stairs. The smile had disappeared completely. She remained silent for a moment and murmured, Tomorrow I have to teach her to be a little more grateful. The words were lost in the void. Upstairs, Lucy folded her thin blanket, placing the half-eaten piece of cake on the table. She clasped her hands gently and whispered to herself, I'm not going to cry anymore. If I cry, Mom will be sad. The weak moonlight filtered through the gap in the curtains, illuminating her pale, small face. In that house, everything remained in silence, a painful silence. As if the whole world had forgotten that a child lived, breathed, and was forgotten there every day. That night, the house was so quiet that the whistle of the wind sneaking through the window frames could be heard clearly. Lucy was curled up in the small cleaning room, hands covered in dust after scrubbing the kitchen floor. The light of a weak bulb illuminated her lap, just enough to light the white sheet resting in front of her on the old wooden table. The pencil was already worn down to the middle. Lucy held it with both hands as if she feared it would disappear if she didn't squeeze it tight. She looked at the paper for a long time before beginning to write. Dear Dad, I miss you so much. Everything is fine here, at least in front of others. But Dad, they don't let me go to school anymore. I only work in the house. My stepmother says I don't behave well, that I have to learn to be more useful. I try so hard, but it seems everything I do is wrong. The pencil trembled. The handwriting looked insecure. A tear fell, smudging some words. Halfway through, she stopped, took a deep breath, and kept writing. I don't want you to be sad, but I'm scared. Every time I spill water or take too long, Mom gets mad. She says I'm weak and don't deserve to be loved. Dad, am I really such a terrible girl? Lucy put the pencil aside. Her little heart beat strongly between fear and hope. She had never said these things to anyone, but the letter was the only place where she could express what she felt, a place where she believed her father would understand her. She folded the letter carefully, put it in an envelope, and sealed it. On the outside, she wrote with meticulous handwriting, For Dad, from Lucy. Outside the door, footsteps were heard. Lucy froze, holding her breath. It was Veronica checking the rooms as she always did before sleeping. She passed the door, stopped for an instant, and then continued on her way. Only when the sound of her heels faded did Lucy dare to exhale. She slid the letter into her coat pocket, waiting for morning to leave it in the mailbox out there. Next to the gate of the Harrison estate. The next sunrise, dew still covered the cobblestone path. Lucy took the broom and went out to the patio as usual. In her pocket, the letter rested neatly, warm from the heat of her hands. The gate of the estate was just a few steps from where she slept. She looked around. Veronica was nowhere to be seen. A small spark of hope ignited. She moved in silence, heart pounding. She just had to leave the letter in the mailbox, and her father would read it. He would know. He would come home. But just as her hand touched the mailbox lid, Veronica's voice sounded behind her, firm and icy. "What are you doing?" Lucy froze and turned slowly. Veronica was on the stairs with her arms crossed, her eyes seeming to pierce through the pocket of the girl's coat. I stammered Lucy, trembling. "I was just sweeping the leaves, ma'am." "Oh, really? And what is that you have in your pocket?" Veronica approached. Her thin hand moved quickly, and the letter fell to the dew-dampened ground. She bent down, picked it up, and read a few lines. A mocking smile drew across her face. "So this was it? You plan to send this to your father?" Lucy shook her head, terrified. "No, I wanted to tell him I miss him." "Miss him?" interrupted Veronica, lowering her tone. "Do you think he wants to read this nonsense? If he discovers you're lying, inventing stories, he'll be disappointed. Maybe he'll think you're just like your mother, weak and useless." The words pierced her heart like a knife. Lucy didn't answer, only lowered her head, hands clenched tight against the hem of her blouse. Veronica tore the letter right in front of her. The small pieces of paper fell to the ground, scattering over the dew. "Your father is busy with important things. Don't bother him. If you want to be loved, learn to obey." Having said that, she turned and walked away. The sound of her heels faded on the pavement, leaving Lucy there motionless, looking at the wet pieces of paper. She knelt, trying to pick them up, but the wind dispersed them even more. One got tangled in the rosebush. Another flew toward the pond, dissolving in the water dot to the side of the house. Mrs. Rose, who was watering the plants, witnessed everything in silence. She didn't dare say a word. When Veronica disappeared from view, she approached and touched the girl's shoulder gently. Child, what happened?" Lucy pressed her lips together, hiding the soaked pieces in her hands. "Nothing, ma'am. I just made a mistake." Mrs. Rose observed her for a long time. There was something in the girl's look that tightened her throat. That night, when everyone was sleeping, Mrs. Rose returned to the patio. The damp pieces were still there, mixed with the fallen leaves. She picked them up one by one, taped them carefully, and put them inside a small box along with some old objects she had kept. Then she hid the box under the stairs, among dusty crates. "Someday he will see this," she whispered. "The truth won't stay buried forever." From that day on, Lucy stopped writing. The small desk in the storage room remained with a blank sheet. The pencil lay motionless with a broken tip. Every time Alexander called, Veronica continued putting him on speaker. "Hi, honey, are you okay?" His voice sounded warm but distant. "I'm fine, Dad," Lucy responded softly. "Did you get the gifts I sent last week?" "Yes, sir." "Thank you, Dad." Veronica smiled and intervened. "See, love? She's such a good girl. I'm taking very good care of her." Alexander let out a small laugh, exchanged a few pleasantries, and hung up. He didn't see that immediately after. Veronica turned off the phone, left it on the table, and looked at Lucy. "You did good," she said with a smooth voice. "Keep it up, and your father will be happy, and you won't have to suffer any punishment. We all win, right?" Lucy nodded, but felt her throat tighten. When Veronica left the room, the girl turned toward the wall, clenching her fists. Mrs. Rose's words resonated in her mind. Someday he will see. But when would that day come? Would it ever really come? That night it began to rain. The rain hit the roof tiles, mixing with the wind to create a sad sound. Lucy lay in the dark, listening to Veronica's footsteps in the hallway. Her voice mixed with laughter as she talked on the phone. "Yes, darling, don't worry, the girl is perfectly fine. She wouldn't dare go anywhere." Those words made Lucy turn toward the wall, and tears began to fall uncontrollably. She remembered the torn letter, every word she had written, and the small hope she had felt believing her father would read it one day. She brought a hand to her chest, touching the empty space where the necklace used to be. No necklace, no letter, nothing to hold on to. Only the faint beat of her heart and a diffuse thought, if my dad really loves me, he will hear this. This small scream inside the silent house. Outside, Mrs. Rose was still awake. She was sitting next to the hidden box under the stairs, tenderly caressing the now dry pieces of paper. On them, Lucy's handwriting, though blurry, was still legible. "Dad, I'm scared," she sighed, closing the lid of the box. But no one knew that in that thick darkness, two hearts remained awake, one out of compassion, the other out of desperation, and between them, a small secret waiting to be discovered. Laughter and conversations resonated from the main hall, accompanied by the melody of a piano hired especially for the occasion. The entire Harrison estate glowed with intense lights, impregnated with the aroma of flowers and sweet pastries. The golden invitations clearly said, "Celebrating Lucy Harrison's 9th birthday." But little Lucy, the honoree, was alone in the attic, in a darkness barely interrupted by the light filtering under the door. The cream-colored dress Veronica had ordered specially for her remained in the closet, never worn. The girl was only wearing an old, worn sweater. In the morning, when the cake was delivered, Lucy had permission to carry the tray to the table. The cake was so beautiful it took her breath away. A layer of white frosting covered with sugar roses. But from trying too hard, her small hands trembled. The tray tilted, and a corner of the cake crumbled onto the floor. The lid fell with a dry metallic sound, and in that instant the air in the room froze. Veronica approached, the smile on her face vanishing. "What did you do?" "I'm sorry. It wasn't my intention." "It wasn't your intention." Her voice turned icy. "Do you know how much this cake cost? Your father will see this and know you are completely incapable of doing anything right." Veronica paused for a few seconds, then sighed, feigning serenity. "Fine. I forgive you. But you ruined the party. Stay up here and don't let anyone see you." With that, she locked the attic door, and the metal bolt resonated with a dry click. Downstairs, the guests began to arrive in droves. The light of the chandeliers reflected in the wine glasses, and laughter filled the air. Veronica greeted each person, her voice soft, her eyes radiating fake happiness. "Hi, Letitia. Hi, Edward. Thanks for coming. Little Lucy isn't feeling very well, so she can't come down. But I'm sure she'd be overjoyed to know you came to celebrate her birthday." Mr. Edward, a lifelong friend of Alexander, frowned in surprise. "She's sick often? I remember she used to be very healthy." Veronica let out a light laugh, bringing a hand to her chest in a worried gesture. "Oh, children are always so fragile. I worry so much, but the doctor said she just needs rest." The answer was perfect, the model of a selfless mother. Everyone nodded with approval. In the attic, Lucy curled up by the small window. She could hear the music rising from below mixed with the laughter of adults, the same people who used to pat her head when they visited. The soft scent of cake and roses filtered through the crack in the door, making her stomach shrink. She didn't feel anger, only emptiness. At that moment, confetti cannons burst from above. Lucy looked through the crack and saw golden and orange lights shooting toward the ceiling, falling like a rain of glitter. She sketched a faint smile, a fragile smile, almost a reflex. Night fell. When the party ended, Veronica stayed at the door saying goodbye to the guests, her face still showing that perfect sweetness. "Thank you all. It was a pleasure having you here today. Next time, Lucy will surely thank you in person." "You are wonderful, Veronica," said a woman. "It's not easy being a stepmother and still loving your husband's daughter so much." Veronica tilted her head, smiling politely. "Love isn't about blood but about responsibility. I only do what I must." When the last door closed, the smile disappeared. She exhaled forcefully, took off her earrings and hurried up the stairs. The attic door opened with a squeak of hinges. Lucy looked up, eyes dull. "Were you here the whole time?" asked Veronica with a voice light as the wind. Lucy nodded. Good. That means you know how to behave. I like that. Lucy placed the empty cake box on the floor. The cake is finished. I also took care of your share. That way I don't have to worry. I just wanted to know. Did Dad call? Asked Lucy with a barely audible voice. Veronica looked at her, eyes empty. Your father is busy. He doesn't have time to read unimportant messages. The answer made Lucy lower her gaze. She knew she wasn't allowed to ask more. Veronica locked the door. Darkness swallowed the room. Elsewhere, in a small house a few blocks from the Harrison estate, Mrs. Rose sat in front of an old table. Her hand trembled as she wrote the recipient's name on an envelope. Alexander Harrison. Corporate Office, Harrison and Associates, European Branch. She had just found out about the big party at the Harrison house, and her heart felt restless. She took out Lucy's old letter, the one she had taped together, folded it carefully, and placed it inside the envelope. I pray this reaches him, she whispered. The next morning, she asked an acquaintance who worked at the downtown post office to send it urgently. But 3 days later, the package was returned. Recipient has moved. Contact new office. Mrs. Rose squeezed the envelope tightly, feeling helplessness spread through her body. It seemed even fate was on the side of the deception. Back in the big house, Veronica was sitting in the living room opening a new photo album. She chose the images taken during the party, herself standing in a brilliantly lit room, smiling elegantly, holding the intact birthday cake. Lucy didn't appear in any of the photos. She placed a label underneath. Lucy's 9th birthday, a day of happiness. She stared at the photo for a long time, then murmured to herself, perfect. Everything is perfect. Night fell. The house was silent after the party. The wind dragged the persistent scent of wine and cake. In the attic, Lucy was still awake, sitting by the window hugging her knees. Through the crack, she saw how the moonlight reflected on the patio where the shiny remains of confetti were scattered. Below, the service staff was cleaning. A table was knocked over by the wind. The bang resonated loudly. Then Lucy startled, looked out, and suddenly saw headlights stop in front of the gate. The yellowish light of a familiar car. She narrowed her eyes, heart pounding. It was a black luxury car, its lights reflecting on the iron latticework. Before we continue, please take a moment to leave a comment about this story and rate it from 1 to 10. How are you feeling? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'm always here to listen. I hope you find a moment of peace and reflection as you follow this healing story and its journey of courage and justice. A figure descended small, slightly hunched, with a scarf covering half her face. Mrs. Rose, whispered Lucy, unable to believe what she was seeing. A moment later, a soft knock was heard at the attic door. Hello, Lucy. It's me, called a trembling but familiar voice. The girl ran to the door, knelt on the floor, and pressed her ear to the crack. Mrs. Rose, why are you here? If Mom finds out... I know, but I had to see you. I was worried, replied Mrs. Rose, voice hoarse from the night air. She left a bag on the stair landing and continued in a low voice. I brought you some bread and milk, and the letter you wrote. Lucy bit her lip, tears accumulating in her eyes. You kept it? Yes. I thought maybe your father would read it if he ever returned, whispered Mrs. Rose with a trembling voice. But if Mom finds out, she'll fire you, said Lucy, barely audible. Mrs. Rose let out a faint laugh broken by a sigh. I was fired, child, a long time ago. I just wanted to see you safe before leaving town. The air seemed to stop. Lucy rested her hand on the door, voice broken. Leaving town? Where will you go? I have family upstate. I'll stay with them. But I promise you, if I have the chance, I will find a way to contact your father. Really? You promise? Yes, my child. You have to believe that things are going to change. Don't lose hope. Understood? In the darkness, Lucy nodded gently. Yes. Lucy wanted to open the door, hug her one more time, but the thick bolts seemed to divide their worlds. On one side was her. On the other, the only person who still cared about the girl. "Be strong, Lucy," said Mrs. Rose with a trembling voice. "I'll leave the bag out here. Inside there is a note I wrote in case anything happened." Her voice faded. Carried by the wind, Mrs. Rose adjusted her shawl and went down the stairs quickly, disappearing into the night. The next morning, the smell of freshly baked bread still floated on the stair landing. Veronica came out of her room frowning. "What is this?" she murmured, bending down to see a few crumbs on the floor. Her eyebrows tensed slightly, and her sharp gaze scanned the hallway. She called the new maid and spoke coldly. "Did anyone go out last night?" "No, ma'am." All doors were locked. "No?" Veronica was silent. Then she walked to the security cabinet, turned on the surveillance screen, and rewound the recording from the previous night. In the image appeared, just for a few seconds, the shadow of an older woman in front of the gate. It was enough to recognize her. "Rose," she whispered, and a satisfied smile drew across her face. That afternoon, Veronica sat in the living room and dialed a number. "Yes, I want to file a formal complaint," she said with an icy voice. "The name is Rose Benitez, formerly a housekeeper here. I discovered she stole money from the house, and last night she returned, possibly with the intention of taking more." On the other end of the line, the officer's voice responded briefly. "We will review the case and bring her in for questioning." Veronica hung up, letting out a sigh of relief. "No one can enter this house again without my permission," she murmured as if trying to convince herself. In the afternoon, she called Lucy to come down. "Lucy." Veronica was sitting in an armchair holding a cup of tea. "Do you know who came last night?" she asked calmly. Lucy lowered her gaze, hands trembling slightly. "No, ma'am." "Really?" insisted Veronica, accentuating the word. "No one brought you food? No one spoke to you? No one?" Then whose are the breadcrumbs on the stairs?" Lucy remained silent. She knew if she told the truth, Mrs. Rose would be in danger. Veronica looked at her for a long moment and then nodded gently. "Fine. I'll believe you." She stood up, placed the teacup on the table, and added with a voice as light as the wind but sharp as a razor, "From now on, I will lock your room door every night. I don't want anyone bothering you. I'm doing it for your own good. Understood?" Lucy nodded, feeling a sensation of suffocation slowly expanding inside her. The next afternoon, 2 police officers appeared at Mrs. Rose's door. "Mrs. Benitez? There is a complaint against you for stealing belongings from the Harrison residence. We need you to come with us to the station for some questions." Mrs. Rose froze. "I would never do something like that." "You can explain it at the precinct. Please cooperate." Trembling, she gathered some essentials, eyes burning from tears that refused to come out. But before leaving, she looked toward the street leading to the Harrison house. A bad feeling tightened her chest. That night, after giving her statement to the police, they informed her she had to leave the city temporarily while the investigation took place. She understood. Veronica had one. On the night bus, Mrs. Rose silently held an envelope in her hands, Lucy's letter, along with a small tape recorder she had used to record Veronica's insults and abuse toward the girl. She had no other choice but to hide them. When the bus stopped for the last time near the gate of the Harrison estate, she got off without making a noise and walked toward the corner of the garden where several old flower pots rested. She chose one with hyacinths, carefully moved the top layer of soil, and placed a small metal box inside. "He will see it," she whispered with trembling hands as she covered the dirt back up. "Alexander, if you still have a little compassion, please look at this." And she left without looking back. That night, Lucy heard the attic lock turn forcefully. Veronica no longer allowed her to leave after finishing her chores. The girl sat by the door with her ear pressed to the wall, listening to her stepmother's voice talking on the phone downstairs. "Yes, I transferred everything." "No, darling. Don't worry. He suspects nothing. All the money is in your account." We'll leave before Alexander returns. Veronica's voice sounded soft, but loaded with calculation. Lucy frowned, holding her breath so as not to miss a word. Leave here? She repeated in her mind, not fully understanding, but feeling that something terrible was about to happen. When the call ended, Veronica's footsteps resonated on the stairs. She stopped for an instant as if listening. Lucy lay down quickly, pretending to sleep. A small click broke the silence. The lock was adjusted once more. Almost at midnight, Lucy fell asleep from exhaustion. In her dream, she ran through a huge field, and someone called her from afar with a voice like her father's. But when she turned, she only found darkness. Downstairs, Veronica was sitting in the living room, phone on the table. The screen lit up showing a new message. Alexander's flight lands at 7:40 a.m. tomorrow. The light of the device reflected on her face. For an instant, she seemed surprised, then a thin smile appeared on her lips. Perfect timing, she murmured softly, letting a note of contempt escape in her voice. Let's see what you think when you see how perfect everything is. She got up and drew the curtains. Outside, the wind began to blow harder, bringing with it the smell of damp earth and a light scent of hyacinths, right where, under the plant, a small box lay in silence waiting to be discovered. In the attic. Lucy slept restlessly, hands still clutching her mother's old handkerchief. She didn't know that in just a few hours, fate would knock on the door of that house, bringing a morning unlike any other. That morning, sunlight spread over the gravel path leading to the Harrison estate. A black luxury car moved slowly, tires crunching softly on the cobblestones damp from the night rain. The automatic gate opened, and Alexander descended from the vehicle tall, well-dressed, with a bouquet of white roses and a large suitcase full of gifts. His face showed a mix of expectation and excitement. After almost a year managing the European branch of Harrison Corp., he had decided to return earlier than planned. He wanted to surprise his wife and little daughter, whom he still believed to be living in complete happiness. "Sir, do you want me to take the luggage?" asked Frederick, his personal driver, in a low voice. "No need, I'll take it myself," Alexander replied with a smile that wouldn't fade. "I want to see their faces when they see me." He walked up the porch steps. Everything was the same as before. The paintings hanging in the hallway, the faint scent of Veronica's perfume, birds singing in the backyard. A scene of apparent peace, as if nothing had changed. But then he heard a sharp, cold voice coming from the back of the house. "Do it again. How many times have I told you to sweep that corner properly? Don't you see the dust?" Alexander stopped, following the sound with his gaze. The kitchen door was ajar, and through the crack, he could see Veronica in an elegant silk dress, standing with arms crossed, voice loaded with anger. In front of her was Lucy, the fragile girl holding a broom, sweeping step by step. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her small hands were dirty. Every time she bent down, her messy hair fell over one side of her face. "Why are you so slow? Do you want to embarrass me?" shouted Veronica, raising her voice. "A normal girl would do this twice as fast as you." Lucy pressed her lips together without answering. But just as she finished sweeping, the cleaning rag slipped from her hands and landed at Alexander's feet. He bent down to pick it up, and in that precise instant, he saw dark marks around his daughter's wrists, barely visible, but unmistakable. "Lucy?" murmured Alexander, voice low and loaded with shock. Veronica spun around immediately. In a fraction of a second, her fake smile appeared. "Alexander! Oh my God, you're back! God, why didn't you let us know so we could welcome you properly?" she exclaimed, running toward him and hugging him with forced enthusiasm. "I wanted to surprise you," he replied without taking his eyes off Lucy's hands. "But it seems I'm the one surprised." Veronica let him go, keeping her voice soft and controlled. "You understand. I was just correcting the girl. She's clumsy, you know, children. If they aren't disciplined, how will they learn to behave?" Alexander leaned down gently and took Lucy's hand, his voice deep and tender. "Honey, what happened to your arm?" "I fell, Dad. The girl replied in a low voice, not daring to look him in the eyes. You fell? Alexander looked at Veronica with a frown. And how does a girl fall and hurt both wrists at the same time? Veronica let out a slight laugh, feigning tranquility. She's just very clumsy. I told her to rest, but she insisted on helping me with the chores. Alexander observed her closely. His wife's smile was disturbingly perfect, not a line out of place, not a crack in her mask. All right, he said finally, voice hardened. I need a moment to get settled. Veronica smiled. Go up, love, go up. I'll prepare breakfast. The living room downstairs was illuminated, but the atmosphere was strangely silent. Lucy remained huddled in a chair, eyes still following her father as he stepped out onto the balcony. Alexander took out his phone and dialed. Frederick, has Veronica sent packages overseas in the last few months? The driver hesitated. Yes, sir. 3 or 4 times, more or less. The boxes were heavy. I took them to an address for Zurich shipping. But she said they were gifts for friends. Do you have the shipping receipts? Yes, sir. I keep them in the car. Bring them to me immediately. Alexander hung up, feeling a bitter coldness run through his body. The little things he had overlooked were now beginning to fit together like fragments of a cracked mirror about to shatter. At noon, Alexander called his daughter's former teacher, Miss Anna, who had taught Lucy at St. Angel's Elementary. Good morning, Miss Anna. This is Alexander Harrison, Lucy's father. Good morning, Mr. Harrison. The teacher sounded surprised. I thought your family had moved since Lucy stopped attending classes over a year ago. I sent letters but never got a response. Alexander fell silent. She stopped going to school. Over a year ago? That's right. Your wife said the girl had a prolonged illness and would be homeschooled. But I never received any document confirming it. He thanked her and hung up. His hand trembled while his eyes slowly scanned the room. The photo of Veronica and Lucy hanging on the wall looked happy. But now he understood that his daughter's smile had never reached her eyes. In the afternoon, a perfect and abundant meal was served at the table. Veronica poured him wine with a voice sweet as honey. See, love? The house is in order. I've done everything possible to make things work smoothly. Alexander remained silent. He looked at Lucy, who was at the corner of the table. Her plate only had cold soup. Lucy, eat, he said. I'm not hungry, Dad. Eat. His voice was soft but firm. Veronica let out a tense laugh. She's afraid of you, Alexander. I told you, she needs time. Alexander set the wine glass on the table, voice calm, but an underlying tension ran through it. You're right. Time is necessary. But perhaps it's time to find out what is really happening in this house. Veronica tensed, though she managed to keep her composure. Are you doubting me? I only doubt what I see, and what I was never allowed to hear. Alexander stood up and walked away before she could respond. It was late when he went out to the garden. He stopped suddenly. A light breeze blew between the bushes of bougainvillea and lavender. Near the big gate, a flower pot was slightly tilted, and the exposed dirt revealed an opaque metal corner. He crouched down and brushed the dirt away with his hands. An old box appeared, covered in dust but with its small latch intact. On the lid, a familiar name was engraved, Mrs. Rose Benitez. The metal box rested on the table covered by a thin layer of dust, just like the secrets that had remained buried in that house. Alexander opened the lid carefully. The hinges creaked dryly, as if warning of something inside. Inside was a roll of paper, a letter taped together with several strips of tape, and next to it, an old tape recorder so deteriorated the plastic had turned yellow. He looked at the two objects for a long time. A mixture of anxiety, fear, and faint hope ran through his body like an underground current, hope that all this was just a misunderstanding. But when he pressed play, Mrs. Rose's trembling and broken voice filled the room. I don't know if you will ever hear this, but if you do, please believe me. Little Lucy receives no food, is not allowed to go to school, and has been kept locked in the attic for months. Every time she makes a mistake, they hit her or humiliate her and repeat that her father doesn't love her anymore. The voice stopped and was replaced by a deep sigh, as if the woman struggled to contain tears. Alexander clenched his fists so hard his knuckles turned white. "I tried to send you the letter the girl wrote you," the voice continued, "but Veronica found out and fired me. I kept a copy and hid it under the flower pot, believing that one day you would return. If you are listening to this, please save her. She can't take it anymore." The recording faded, leaving a low, constant hum in the air. Alexander remained motionless. The room seemed to shrink around him. He carefully unrolled the old paper. The tape peeled off in small pieces. Inside were crooked lines, his daughter's childish handwriting. "Dad, I miss you so much. Stepmother says you don't love me anymore. I don't want to believe it, but you don't call or send letters anymore. I'm scared. Did I do something bad, Dad?" Alexander's hands trembled. The letter was stained with tears. He didn't know if they were his daughter's or his own. A sharp pain pierced his chest. Suddenly it was hard to breathe, as if every written word crushed his heart. 3 years. He had spent 3 years traveling for business, trusting that Veronica was taking care of his daughter. 3 years sending gifts, making calls, but always hearing only her sweet, brief voice. The girl is already asleep. But now he understood everything. It had been a farce. Alexander stood up. Every step felt heavy, as if the weight of all those years fell on him at once. He went down the stairs and found Veronica sitting in the living room with a glass of wine in her hand, looking calm as if everything were under control. "What are you hiding from me?" His voice was low, but every word carried a contained fury. Veronica looked up. A flash of surprise appeared in her eyes before she recovered her usual serenity. "But hiding what? You're becoming suspicious again. You lied." Alexander placed the box on the table. "Explain this." She looked at the box, lips trembling slightly, but kept her tone firm. "Where did you find that?" "In the place where only ugly things are hidden." He looked her straight in the eyes. "Mrs. Rose told me everything." "And this?" He held up the wrinkled paper. "This is Lucy's letter." Veronica closed her eyes for an instant and then let out a disdainful laugh. "You trust a maid more than your own wife. How ridiculous." "I fired Mrs. Rose for theft and now she invents stories." "And the letter?" "Children have a lot of imagination." "She just wants attention. Pity." Alexander clenched his jaw. "Pity?" "Pity for a girl who was forced to starve, locked up for months in a dark room." "And you call it imagination?" Veronica stood up abruptly, her voice starting to sharpen like a blade. "Don't forget who has kept this house in order for the last 3 years. Who has represented you at all the social events. Did you ever wonder what I had to endure raising another woman's illegitimate child?" "Don't use work as an excuse for cruelty," replied Alexander. His gaze turning icy. Silence filled the room. Veronica lowered her voice, approaching slowly, her hand reaching toward his shoulder. "Honey, don't make a scene. We can forget all this. Lucy will be fine. You know children forget quickly." Alexander pushed her hand away firmly. "You're right about one thing, Veronica. I forgot. But I forgot I was the father of a girl who needed protection." He took out his phone and dialed a number. "Thomas, I need you to immediately reset my access to all accounts and send me copies of transactions from the last 6 months." Veronica gave a slight start. "What are you doing?" "Recovering what belongs to me. And to Lucy." That afternoon, Alexander sat in his office. Bank records appeared on the computer screen. The numbers were consistent with regular transfers to an overseas account. Recipient: David Miller. He frowned. David, a name Veronica had mentioned once at a party, introducing him as an investment advisor. This time, the numbers didn't lie. The phone rang. It was the principal of Lucy's old school, St. Angel's. "Mr. Harrison, thanks for returning the call. I checked the records today. Your wife signed the withdrawal documents for Lucy and your signature appears too. But I regret to inform you that the signature was forged." Alexander was silent for a few seconds before responding slowly. "Thank you. I'll handle this." When he hung up, his heart was no longer full of anger, but of absolute coldness. He opened a drawer and took out a photograph of the three of them, the family portrait that hung in the living room. Veronica smiled with artificial brightness, but Lucy, in contrast, looked distant, as if she already knew that home was just a facade. He held the photograph between his hands and then placed it on the desk, closing his eyes gently as if trying to contain a storm inside his chest. That night, Veronica continued maintaining her composure. She even chose a red dress before going down to the dining room with a glass of wine in hand. "You'll regret this if you damage your own reputation," she said with a firm voice. "No one will believe a story like that. They'll just see a businessman losing control because he gave credit to a child's tale." Alexander observed her with disturbing calm. "You're wrong. They will see a father who no longer stays silent." He stood up and took out his phone. "Who are you calling?" asked Veronica, losing her security for an instant. "The only people who can put an end to this." The phone rang 3 times before a voice answered on the other side. "Police department." Alexander took a deep breath. His voice came out clear, every word cutting the air like a knife. "My name is Alexander Harrison. I want to report a crime. Child abuse and financial fraud within my family." Police sirens broke the silence of the cold morning, tearing through the tranquility of the elegant neighborhood. The gate of the Harrison estate opened wide. Blue and red lights illuminated the white walls, reflecting in the windows that once symbolized a perfect family. Veronica stood in the middle of the living room, pale, still holding the half-finished glass of wine. When 2 officers entered, she backed away slowly. Her voice trembled, though she tried to maintain control. "You are making a mistake. I haven't done anything wrong." But behind them, Alexander stood motionless, face expressionless. He placed a thick folder on the table containing the bank statements, Mrs. Rose's recording, and Lucy's letter, all handed over as evidence to the investigators. "There is no mistake, Veronica," he said with a deep, serene, but definitive voice. "There is only one person who has lived a lie for too long." She looked at him, and for a moment her eyes revealed panic. "So you trust them more than your wife?" Alexander responded without looking at her. "I trust the truth." One of the officers stepped forward and read the arrest warrant. "Mrs. Veronica Harrison, you are charged with child abuse and embezzlement of your husband's personal assets. We ask that you cooperate." Veronica let out a choked, dry laugh. "Abuse? I was just educating her. The girl is weak. She needs discipline. I did it for her own good." One of the officers looked at her coldly and said, "If that is love, then the world is very wrong." They handcuffed her while escorting her toward the door. Veronica looked back, eyes full of fear and hate at the same time. "You'll regret it, Alexander. You'll never escape your guilt for the rest of your life." He didn't answer. Only when the car door slammed shut did Alexander close his eyes gently and say, "I know." Outside, a light rain began to fall. Small drops hit the pavement, slowly dissolving as if erasing the footprints of the person who had just left that house forever. 2 days later, the news dominated the headlines. Prominent businessman's wife arrested for abuse of stepdaughter. 9-year-old girl's letter shocks the entire city. Media crowded in front of the gate of the Harrison estate. Neighbors gathered outside the fence. Their faces, once full of admiration for Veronica, now showed shame and bewilderment. A middle-aged woman whispered to a reporter, "I thought she was the perfect mother. I can't believe it. We were blind." Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Veronica sat across from 2 detectives. She still tried to maintain a facade of confidence. "I didn't mistreat her. I just wanted her to be stronger. But she cried all the time, always missing her father. I taught her to be quiet, to resist. In life, the weak are the ones who end up crushed." One of the detectives tapped the table gently with his pen. "And the money transfers overseas to a man named David Miller? Was that part of the training too?" Veronica tensed. "I was just helping a friend." "A friend?" The other detective let out an incredulous laugh. "A friend you sent over $200,000 to in 6 months?" Having nothing else to say, She turned her face to the side, lips tight, silence becoming her only defense. Meanwhile, Alexander and Lucy were summoned to the courthouse to testify. Lucy sat in the chair, tightly squeezing her mother's old handkerchief, the only belonging she still kept. But every question made her tremble. Yet, seeing her father seated beside her, she found a little calm. "Are you scared?" asked Alexander gently. "No, Dad," she replied, looking ahead. "I just want Mom not to come back." He squeezed her hand tenderly, a silent promise. The day of the trial, the weather was unusually clear. The room was full of reporters, neighbors, and onlookers. Veronica entered dressed in a gray prison uniform. Her face was pale, though a faint trace of arrogance still shone in her eyes. Mrs. Rose Benitez was also present, sitting in the back row, hands clutching her cloth bag. When her gaze crossed Alexander's, she nodded slightly. The prosecutor presented all the evidence: bank statements, Mrs. Rose's recording, Lucy's letter, the forged signatures. With every element shown, the atmosphere became heavier. When the recording began to play, Mrs. Rose's trembling voice resonated throughout the room. The girl was locked up all night without water or food. I begged her to stop, but she told me to mind my own business, that she didn't deserve pity. Veronica closed her eyes, clenching her hands, but didn't say a single word. When the letter was read aloud, the entire room fell silent. "Hi, Dad, I miss you. Mom says you don't love me anymore. I don't want to believe it, but I'm scared." Scared that it's true. A reporter wiped away a tear. Mrs. Rose discreetly lowered her head. And Alexander, the man formerly known for his serenity, sat with hands clasped, eyes burning with pain. When the judge pronounced the sentence, his voice was solemn but firm. Based on irrefutable evidence, the defendant Veronica Harrison is sentenced to 6 years in prison for child abuse and embezzlement of funds. She is permanently prohibited from any contact with the victim, Lucy Harrison. Veronica collapsed for an instant. Then she looked up at Alexander with an expression full of hate but without any strength. "You will live with your guilt forever," she murmured. Alexander responded calmly. "No, I will live to amend it." 2 officers escorted her out of the room. The courthouse door closed, and the metallic sound of the bolt resonated down the long hallway. Outside, the press surrounded Alexander. He stopped without fleeing the cameras. "Mr. Harrison, do you have anything to say?" asked a reporter. Alexander looked directly into the lens, his voice deep but clear. "Yes, I have something to say. I want to tell something to all the parents watching this. Indifference is sometimes crueler than abuse. I thought I was doing the right thing, working, making money, securing my daughter's future. But I abandoned her in her present. And the price is a pain that cannot be endured." His words went viral in hours. Thousands of comments appeared on social media. "He's right. Sometimes we forget those who need us most." The next day, neighbors brought a small bouquet of flowers to the gate of the Harrison residence. Inside were handwritten cards. "Forgive us, Lucy. We believed in the wrong person." The girl took the flowers, said nothing, just nodded slightly. In her dark, deep eyes, fear began to fade, giving way to a faint light of hope. Mrs. Rose Benitez was invited again as a witness to the press conference. Upon leaving the courthouse, Alexander approached her and bowed slightly, murmuring, "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have lost my daughter forever." Mrs. Rose smiled with moist eyes. "Don't thank me. Thank that letter. She saved you both." In the afternoon, as the sun sank toward the west, the courthouse hallway stretched long and empty. Lucy walked out slowly, clutching her mother's old handkerchief in her hands. The light entering through the window illuminated her small face. At the end of the hallway, Alexander waited for her with his hand extended. Slow but firm, the girl approached, stopped for an instant, and then put her hand in his. No one spoke. Outside, sunlight spilled over the stairs, illuminating 2 figures, one large and one small, walking together, moving away from what was once a tragedy. And behind them, the courthouse door closed, sealing the past and opening a new chapter of redemption and love. After the trial, the mansion that once overflowed with people remained in silence. The white curtains were opened wide, letting in a clarity the house hadn't felt in a long time. Alexander sat in his study with the morning paper open on the table. The headlines still spoke of the case, but he no longer read them. Every word was a wound, a reminder of the years he had lost. From the adjacent room, soft laughter was heard. Lucy was in her art therapy session with her teacher. She was still thin, but her cheeks had recovered some color, and her eyes lit up little by little every time she looked at her father. Alexander stopped writing, listened for a moment, and sketched a faint smile. Every morning was the same. Father and daughter walked together through the garden. The cobblestone path that had previously felt Veronica's steps was now covered in purple lavender, the flower his late wife, Lucy's mother, loved so much. "Dad, I think Mom used to plant flowers here, right?" asked Lucy with a voice soft as the wind. "Yes," Alexander replied, following every petal with his gaze. "Back then, your mother loved taking care of the garden. She used to say that when the flowers bloomed, it was a sign that good things would return." "So, that the flowers bloom today means I'm getting better?" The girl tilted her head, eyes clear and full of curiosity. He smiled and nodded tenderly. "Maybe it's for both of us." They walked a few steps more. Lucy stopped suddenly, and with a hesitant voice asked, "If you hadn't returned in time, what would have happened?" Alexander stopped. The garden wind calmed. He looked at his daughter, her innocent eyes marked by the scars of the past. He knelt down, resting his large hand on the girl's shoulder. "Then I never would have forgiven myself." Lucy remained silent, but her gaze became warmer, as if that answer had been the one she had waited for all those years. In the afternoon, the small room on the second floor was renovated. Alexander transformed it into a small art studio for Lucy. On the walls hung her first drawings, a house with two people holding hands, another of a blue sky with white flowers, and a fine figure of a woman with long hair under the sunlight. Alexander observed her attentively. "You drew your mom?" "Yes," nodded Lucy with a small smile. "I don't remember her face well, but I remember her perfume. So I drew the scent instead of the face." Those words tightened Alexander's throat. He put a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Your mother would be very proud of you." On her desk was a document reserved for her, a registration certificate for a children's painting class. "Tomorrow you start at a new school," he said with an encouraging tone. "There will be other kids who also like to paint." Lucy hesitated. Maybe I won't fit in." "It's okay," replied Alexander, smiling. "Start with a smile. Sometimes a smile is the beginning of a friendship, Lucy." In the following days, Alexander stepped away from business, sold most of his shares, refused interviews and important projects. Every morning he got up before dawn, prepared tea, made breakfast, and sat with his daughter to eat in silence, a silence that no longer weighed, but was full of peace. Lucy's teacher used to stay a while after class to talk to him. "She's recovering very fast," she said. "But she still carries inside the fear that love might disappear at any moment." Alexander was silent, responding in a low voice. "I understand that feeling perfectly, teacher, because I was the one who allowed it all to happen." From that day on, Alexander began keeping a journal. Every page recorded a day with his daughter, from Lucy's first day of school to the first time she dared to raise her hand to speak in class, or that afternoon she went alone to the art store to buy paints without him. On the first page he wrote, "The first day of a new life. She still startles at the sound of a closing door, but she has learned to smile when she sees the sun. Perhaps that smile is the only thing I will never allow myself to lose." He called the notebook a father's last promise. Time passed. Autumn arrived and leaves covered the cobblestone path leading to the Harrison estate. One afternoon, while Lucy was drawing on the porch, Alexander came out to the garden with an envelope in his hand. "You know," he said with a calm voice, "I just signed the papers to donate to a child protection foundation. They're going to open more support centers for abandoned children, like you once were." Lucy looked up with bright eyes. So no one else will have to live with fear, Dad? Not if we don't turn our backs on them, he replied. I want to help too, said the girl with determination in her voice. I'll paint many pictures to sell them and send the money to the foundation. Alexander laughed softly. Deal, we'll do it together. He observed her for an instant. In her face, he saw something stronger than resilience. It was forgiveness, something he was still not capable of giving himself. That night, Alexander was in his study under the warm light of the lamp. His tired face had a new serenity. The journal was open, and he was writing the last lines of the day. She laughs more. She sleeps better. Maybe little by little I'm learning to be a father again. But sometimes in the middle of the night, I still hear myself asking why it took so much pain to understand something so simple. He put the pen down gently and looked out the window. The moon hung in the sky, listening in silence to his thoughts. Soft knocks sounded on the door. Dad? Can I come in? Lucy's voice was soft as dew. Come in, my life, he replied. The door opened. Lucy entered with a small envelope folded carefully. She placed it on the desk. I wrote it for you. You don't have to read it now, she said with a shy smile. Alexander looked at her tenderly. Should I be scared? He asked jokingly. No. Lucy shook her head, smiling. No, Dad. She turned around and ran toward her room, and he followed her with his gaze. With a warmth in his eyes he hadn't felt in years, Alexander took the envelope and opened it slowly. Inside there were only a few lines written with round, firm handwriting. Dad, I have forgiven you. Not because you did the right thing, but because I know you are doing everything possible not to do the wrong thing again. Below was a small drawing. Two hands intertwined under a rising sun. Alexander remained in silence for a long time. Then he folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the journal, right on the first page. Lucy looked up, her eyes shining, reflecting a faint pink tone. Dad, she said in a low voice. I think Mom would be proud of you. Alexander smiled tenderly, his voice deep and warm. And of you too, daughter. In that instant, time seemed to stop. But all the mistakes, all the pain, all the dark memories faded under the afternoon light. And that is the story for tonight. A journey full of tears but also overflowing with hope between Alexander and Lucy. Today, what do you think of this story? Which character moved you more? Lucy, the girl who had the courage to rise above her own pain? Or Alexander, the father who dedicated the rest of his life to repairing his mistakes and learning how to love his daughter truly? What was the most unforgettable moment for you? When Lucy wrote the phrase, I have forgiven you, Dad, or when father and daughter planted the bougainvillea tree together, a symbol of a new beginning? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit like. Good morning, so we can talk about love, forgiveness, and faith in the kindness that still exists in this world. See you in the next bedtime story, where every small act of kindness can change an entire life.